fall off in a minute. Morning.
Morning.
The airline industry is crazy. Is that right?
It's well, it's fun. It's good. I'm 10 months in the aviation business. It's my first time here. I mean, I find it's a great business. It's one of those ones people love to travel.
Yep.
So when the customer has an innate interest in what they do, and people love to travel, whether that's air travel, train travel, or sea travel, it makes the category quite interesting. But it's I think there is going to be a shakeout in the next number of 5 years. I think there is an element of overcapacity with the inefficient carriers, and that's where the squeeze is going to be. I think everyone knows what we do. We've got a big number of aircraft coming on stream. That's going to make our fares even better. It's going to make us even lower cost. It's going to improve our network, and as we're improving the customer experience and improving the product that we have.
Friendly and low cost work together, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Are you the new friendly face of Ryanair?
No, I think after 5 years, Michael decided he was far too nice. So he's brought me in to bring a hard edge to the brand and the service.
You guys have got, as you say, there's an awful. You've placed some massive orders. The 800s, obviously, we know about, and then the recent order for the Maxes. That's a really big bet on you guys being the winners.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when we talked a lot about it last week, if you kind of look at it, we'll get to, at the end of 2024, we'll have a fleet of 520 aircraft. So there'll be an element of decommissioning some of the older aircraft. But we'll have 520 aircraft minimum in 2024. That's doubling the size of Ryanair to about 150 to 160 million passengers. I would context it and say we're the number one in Europe this year. We'll have about 13.5–14% market share as the number one, with quite a distance between us and EasyJet as the number two. So even the number one by a distance having 13–14% market share, contrast that with the US, where Southwest have about 25% market share. So the headroom does exist. In Germany, for example, we've got 4% market share. So Great Britain is the country that gets low-cost airlines the most, because there's 60% of the flights in and out of Great Britain are on a low-cost airline. Only, it's a much smaller percentage in Germany. Germans get savvy living and they get savvy travel, so that will happen at a point in time. So we could double in size over the next 10 years by growing in Germany, by growing in Scandinavia, by growing in the Eastern Mediterranean, by growing here in the UK. Even next year, we're adding over 1.2 million passengers in and out of Ireland, a country with 4 million people. So it's possible. We can double in size without leaving Europe.
Do you need to make acquisitions to make that work, do you think?
It's a possibility, but we don't need to.
Right. And Cyprus is being seen as one of those areas you could look at. What are the opportunities there?
Cyprus is interesting geographically more than anything else. I mean, it's part of Europe. It's where kind of Europe meets Asia meets North Africa. Yeah. And strategically on the map, because you've got Lebanon, because you've got Israel, because you've got North Africa, you've got the Middle East. There's a lot of traffic between Moscow and Cyprus as well. So from that point of view, it's interesting. From a customer demand point of view, that part of the world is becoming more open, becoming more affluent, and people want to travel. It also has it would bring a second AOC. It would also bring 6 leased Airbus, which would be interesting. So we're first and foremost interested in that part of Europe. Yeah. I think we're one of the handful of people that I think are in the final stages now and we've made a bid. I think everybody knows that. If that doesn't happen, we're still very interested in that part of Europe, and we'll apply for our own AOC.
But the perimeter gets bigger. That's kind of what we're looking at here.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the opportunities, you've talked about, there's all kinds of different regions within that. Which is the most attractive? How big an opportunity, we're going to be talking to Aeroflot in a moment, how big an opportunity is Russia, for instance?
I mean, Moscow and St. Peter are big opportunities. I think we'd all probably want the situation between Russia and the Ukraine to be to be stable, because I think that's kind of thrown that in, that's kind of made that a bit more difficult. And I just read yesterday that the Russians potentially saying, we're going to make flying over Russian airspace a little harder, and I think we'd all want that situation to go back the way it was pre that current crisis. Look, it's a big economy, it's a growing economy. There's a huge amount of traffic from those two cities to Europe, and from various cities in Europe to those two cities. So, like anywhere else, when you've got that amount of customer demand, it's a big piece, and it's a big piece. It's not an essential piece.
Right. But in terms of the MAX order, kind of how can I think about the MAX order and the opportunities that you're talking about there within the same thought, i.e. some of that capacity is going to end up, you're already pre-positioning and planning some of that capacity to operate in those markets?
Absolutely. That capacity over the next 10 years could operate. I would be surprised if some of it isn't operating as far as Russia, also in the Eastern Mediterranean. But we can get to 150 million without Russia and without Cyprus being in the mix. That part of Europe will naturally be in the mix, but without the acquisition of Cyprus happening.
It strikes me at the moment that you're letting EasyJet do some of the hard work for you, which is a nice position to maybe be in. You're changing the business model in a number of ways, assigned seating, all of those kind of bits and pieces that are coming together, the focus on the business class market. They took a while to roll out assigned seating. I can't remember how many months it was, but it was kind of, 7, 8, 9 months to roll that out effectively. You did it in one. Are you just kind of watching what they're doing and doing it faster?
I think where we would watch, for me as a retailer coming into the aviation business, I'm generally surprised with how backward it is in some ways. I think the aviation business hasn't done a good job in the past 20 years of listening to customers.
Yep.
I would agree with a lot of what Bjorn says. It's very conservative, it's very administrative, it's very regulatory.
Yep.
And when you contrast that with retail, look at the websites, look at the use of data, look at the way merchandising and ancillaries is done. The aviation business needs to really radically improve. EasyJet have done a good job on their website. They've done a good job of broadening the product and the distribution. But in our sites, we will look at what every other airline has done, including EasyJet. I like some of the things Vueling have done with their app, for example.
Yep.
But we'll also look outside the category. I think if you want to get a view on what's the best way to use the customer data that we have, and as an airline, you've got fantastic customer data. I haven't really seen anyone use it. I used to live in Dusseldorf, and I used to be flying with Lufthansa 6 times a week. I had a Miles & More credit card, and I still get pointless emails, and they've never really targeted me the way they could, knowing what they know about me from my credit card and from the things I did with Lufthansa. So I think, yes, we look at EasyJet, yes, we look at other airlines. We also look outside of the aviation category to say who's doing smart things on digital, who's doing smart things with data, who's going to be doing smart things with ancillaries, and that's where we'll kind of have our sights set.
So you're a retail guy. If you were to look at people that are doing it well in the retail markets, who do you look at? Is it ASOS? Is it kind of companies like that? They're employing a lot of maths graduates at the moment to make their business models work. Do you need to employ more maths graduates?
Yeah, and we're in the process of doing that. We've now got some people who are working in Ryanair who've joined in the past 6 months who would never have thought of working in Ryanair, and Ryanair probably thought we'll never have people like that working in Ryanair. When I look at retail, I would always say across Europe right now, just look at Aldi.
Right.
And look at Aldi here in Great Britain, look at Aldi in the Republic of Ireland, where Aldi is now growing in a market that's growing, that's got deflation. Aldi, which 5 years ago was called the German discounter, and it's where people went when times were tight. You now have an Aldi that's opened up in Kensington. Aldi last year won the sparkling wine of the year in Great Britain for Christmas. I think Aldi have done a really, really good job of retaining what is special about their business, which is low cost, allows you to give the lowest prices in that supermarket, but they've evolved the proposition. They've evolved the range of British fresh food that you can get here. They've evolved the customer service. They've evolved the brand. So now shopping at Aldi is a bit of a badge of honour for white middle class families here in Great Britain. And I think that's a really good example from food retail. IKEA similarly was a place that we all went and bought our first flat pack
Blue
furniture.
and yellow as well. That kind of works.
Blue and yellow, like the branding. IKEA was where we went when you had to kind of kit out your first apartment. But now people have a relationship with IKEA as a brand, and you can grow up and keep shopping at IKEA. They have a fantastic app. They have a fantastic website. If you like the shops, that's great. If you don't like the shops, you can just shop online, and they'll come and assemble and do everything for you. Similarly, H&M, ASOS, as you mentioned. So I think retail has evolved, and I think that's one of the good examples that airlines can look at and say, well, how do we evolve, and then in the same way use customer data.
What's the gap, do you think?
Data is a big part of the gap in terms of what do you know about the customers who choose you, in terms of what do they do with you today, what would they like to do with you today, what's all the type of information that you can get, how can you use that to improve the website, to improve the in-flight customer experience, to improve the retention. I think what's happening is, if you take our business model, we used to say passengers and we used to say transactions, and we're now saying customers, and we're now trying to have relationships with those customers. That's going to take some time.
Yeah.
I think it's moving from mass acquisition and high churn to still a focus on acquisition because we're a growing business, but much better conversion and much better retention of the customers we have. We've got 1.5 billion visits to our website a year, so it's probably the most visited travel website in Europe. We just need to be relentlessly focused on improving the conversion of people who come to the website, and we need to be very, very smart in retargeting people who've flown with Ryanair to get them to keep flying with Ryanair.
You talk about Lidl and the badge of honour, the sort of white middle class badge of honour, the sparkling wine, all that kind of thing. You are pushing the brand towards the business community, something that you've never really done before. Does the Lidl model apply there as well? Trying to make a relationship work with a business traveller who has very different needs, very different expectations, it is something that's going to take time. Aldi and Lidl have done it. How long did it take them? How long do you think it's going to take you? Kind of, again, can I compare and contrast the models?
Yeah, I think it's going to take some time to do that for a particular segment of the business travellers. I would say, of the 82 million people we had fly with us last year, we think about 25% were business travellers. Now that's because we've got a network choice of 1,600 routes. That's because we've got the lowest cost. So small and medium-sized businesses in Italy have always been choosing Ryanair because we're the number one for flying outside of Italy. We're the number one for domestic travel within Italy. So we've already had a big part of our customer base has been business travellers. We see business travel as something, it's no longer about spending 2 hours in the lounge. It's no longer about a free breakfast and a curtain that goes back through the aircraft. It's no longer about different seats. For us, there's a type of business traveller who says, I spend all my time on my phone nowadays, so it's not about shopping in the airport. It's about, if you're flying every week, all you want to do is get through the airport, have a reliable service, get to where you need to get to, and get through the airport to the other end. And it's about time, and it's about the lowest cost. And that's the type of business traveller that we're appealing to. I mean, so far the bookings on Business Plus we're very, very happy with. So we're taking over 4,000 bookings a day, and we haven't really kicked into our winter schedule. So from October 26, when we've got those key city pairs, we're going to be flying, 4 times daily from Dublin, from Stansted to all of the big European cities, out in the morning and back the same day, which is a key thing that businesses are looking for. So our business strategy is a combination of making the product available on GDS, having Business Plus, which is a product tailored towards the business travellers, and then having a schedule that's completely orientated with more primary airports and departure times that are suited towards the business travellers. That's what will make a lot of businesses say, well, why am I wasting money having my people fly? If you're in Cambridgeshire, if you're in Hertfordshire, why would you drive all the way around to Heathrow or Gatwick when Stansted is there? It's a quicker airport to get through. And that's why we're going to have 17 million passengers next year in Stansted.
Back to the point about ancillary revenues and retailing. Do you have a different relationship with the business customer? As you say, they're kind of, I want to get from A to B. Does the leisure traveller, is the leisure traveller a better ancillary revenue generator going forward than the business traveller, or do you think that's exactly the opposite?
I think they're both really, really strong. I think they're in different ways. So if you take I think our view of ancillaries is more focused around the leisure traveller, someone who's who wants to kind of stack on the extra things that they can get with on top of the flight. So there is, I think they're different, but they're both quite significant. I think with the business traveller, there are different types of and new types of ancillaries that we're thinking of next year that we could offer the business travellers that we haven't had in our mix before. So I think both are very strong opportunities for ancillaries, but they will be quite different.
Just in terms of where the business will be in 5 years' time, Christoph was talking about the mix and kind of how that can change so significantly. Are we due a big step change in the mix of revenues? Is that going to happen, or is that just something that happens evolutionary over a very long period of time we don't notice, or is it going to be a big step change? Are we going to, the rules are going to change, it's going to become easier to do this? How does it work in your mind?
I think it's going to be an evolution with some steps in that evolution. I think some will crack it before others. I think there is a big ancillary opportunity that's waiting to happen beyond the traditional ones that we all kind of know and are used to. And I think there'll be some interesting partnerships happen in the next number of years. I think that's going to be driven by customers saying, that kind of works.
Trial and error, or?
No, I think there's some good ones between airlines and retailers that could be quite interesting. And I think it's going to be what's an association.
Is there an example of that you could give us?
Well, there's a few that we're thinking of. I'm not going to share them because we think they're quite interesting. But I think there's a few interesting ones. I mean, I think view it as customers see it. Customers see, well, I travel with an airline, and I travel with it. If I'm traveling with an airline with a young family from a leisure point of view,
Yep.
there are some natural extensions of that brand relationship, be they financial, be they telecommunications, be they retail. I think you'll see a wider spectrum of ancillary possibilities, and I think some will crack that, some won't crack it, but I think there will be a
Is that going to be the
evolution.
defining factor of who wins and who loses, who cracks it and who doesn't? It's not about turnaround times. It's not about
It's
operating efficient aircraft. It's about
It's
that.
still about that. It's still
Right.
about that. I think ancillaries is a really, really important part of it. But in the end of the day, we're all still airlines. You still have to run a really, really tight operation. We all want to have the lowest possible cost. We all want to have the lowest possible fares. Ancillary is a key part of the revenue that you can put on top of that. But it's still about being a great airline with the best turnarounds.
Okay, Kenny, thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Guy.
All right, we'll play musical chairs. Giorgio.